So today I'm going to be doing computer disassembly and reassembly. So to start, you're going to flip these little tabs here and then take off these two screws to remove this top piece right here to get inside. Okay, so we now have the top taken off along with the screws, so now we can see inside and see all of our hardware and parts. To start off, I'm going to take my electrostatic wrist strap to prevent ESD, make sure it's contact with the skin, and take off all of our jewelry and our watch, so no parts get electrocuted and can damage it. So to start off, I'm gonna pull out our SATA data cables, which are running to the hard drive and the optical drive. Now that we have our two cables out, we can, since we're already over here, we can take out our USB and our USB audio. Set those aside. And next we can go to take out our 24-pin power supply, which goes from our power supply to the motherboard to give the motherboard power. Now we have that unplugged, we can go ahead and unplug our case fan, which you can see the wire goes to here. Typically, we don't want to remove our CPU fan, so we're just going to leave that plugged in here. But we can remove our 4-pin power connector, which powers our CPU. Now we can come over here and unplug our power LEDs. Sometimes these are a bit complicated, so you might want to take a picture to memorize them, but you can also see right here on how they go. Now we have all of our wires unplugged. We can take and flip these little levers to take out our RAM, which is our, I believe this is a DDR3 8GB RAM, so in total I have 16 gigabytes on this computer. Alright, we now have everything disconnected from the motherboard except for our CPU fan. Now we can take out our optical drive and our, our SSD and our optical drive. So to start with the SSD, we're going to take our screwdriver and unscrew these top screws here that hold it up. Now that we have that unscrewed, we can take and unplug our SATA power cable from it. So this is a 250 gigabyte SSD. Put it over here. And then now we can take out our optical drive, which we take out the other SATA power cable here from the back. And then for this model, it's kind of easy. You just pull up these two pins and push it out through the front. Oh. Now we have our optical drive out. So over here. Now all that's left is our power supply and our motherboard to take out. So to take out the power supply, we're going to take out these 4 screws right here, and it's going to slide out. Now that we have our 4 screws out, we can take and we can push it here, and then just pick it up and take it out and set it to the side. Now that we have everything else out, it's time to take out our motherboard, and you can see we have I believe 6 screws going in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have a screw by our RAM slot, screw by our PS2, and our CPU fan up here, and then one that's down here by our audio and our PCIe 16, and then another one right next to it, along with one over here by our SATA data slots, and then one over here in between our PCIe 16 and our RAM slots. So get those all taken out. Now we have all 6 screws removed. We can carefully take our power supply, motherboard. We can take our motherboard out the computer case. We now have all of our hardware parts laid out here. We have our 250 gigabyte HDD. I said SDD earlier, I was wrong, it's an HDD. We have our motherboard, of course, with our CPU fan, and over top of our heat sink. I believe it's a heat sink. This uses the metal blades to like absorb heat from the CPU because they typically get hot, and then the CPU fan takes the hot air out of the fans and blows it up to the case fan, which blows it out of the computer. So it just this is to cool off the CPU, prevent overheating. Here we have our RAM slots, which our RAM is our cache memory, and then our HDD, which is used for our like normal memory, and then our optical drive here, which is used for reading and writing discs, and of course our power supply, which I believe it's an ATX basic power supply. So we can go ahead and put these back in, and to start with that, we're going to take our motherboard over here, and we're going to set it down where it lines up with all 6 holes. You also want to make sure that it lines up with our PS2, VGA, Ethernet, all that on the side, you can see, because if it doesn't line up properly on the side here, it won't screw in right. So you might have to adjust a little bit. There we go, you can see it's lined up there. Make sure it's not sitting on any cords or anything like your USB and your power LED. And then we should be good to start screwing them back in once everything's properly lined up. Alright, now we have all 6 of our screws back in, and the motherboard is secured down, and then we can see that all of our, like our VGA, our PS2, USB, audio, Ethernet, more USB, I believe our parallel, one of these two, oops, those are all lined up, so those won't, if they're not properly lined up, the motherboard won't screw in right, and they won't be able to plug in here. So now we can take our power supply, and goes in like so. Oh, hello there. Jiminy Christmas, dude. Yep. Make sure it's. Jeez Louise. Technical difficulties. Alright, so slides in here. There's like a little thing it slides on. Just push it forward, and then it lines up to put in our 4 screws to secure it back in. Okay, we now have our screws, so it's in tight. You never want to open a power supply, because power supplies, the components inside, sometimes hold an extended charge, and you can get electrocuted or like ruin it, which you don't want that. And then we have our switch right here, which that switches the output for different countries, I believe. And then now we have that, we can either put in our HDD or our optical drive. We're just going to go ahead and put in our optical drive because that's the easiest. So as you can see, it just slides through the front of the computer case here, and then there's going to be little holes on the side. Once the holes line up right there, take these pins, push them back down, and you're good to go there. Now we can move these out of the way. Then take our HDD, and you want to, I typically like to plug it in before I screw it, because before I screw it back on, because it's kind of hard sometimes. So I'm gonna try to like set this up. So we're gonna take our SATA power supply, power cable, and it's gonna go right on this side. You can tell it's a SATA because of the L shape. Oh. Okay, so I ran out of storage on my phone, so I had to delete some stuff, but we have 2 videos. So now we have our SATA power cable right there. We're going to take one of our SATA data cables over here, and we're going to plug it into the SATA data cable slot. The SATA. Wow. Forgive my speech. I'm illiterate. So it goes in there. You can tell by the L shape. You can see there's 4 of them. L shape here. Goes right there like so. And then goes in here to our SATA data. Ooh. Okay, so this runs data from the motherboard to the hard drive for like storage and stuff like that. All right, so also a motherboard is practically the backbone of the computer. It houses all of the important hardware and stuff. So now we have that. We can screw it back in right here. Okay, and after a grueling fight, we finally got these screwed in here. So now all that's left is to plug in our power LEDs, our USB, our case fan, optical drive, and our normal power supply here. So next up, we're going to want to take our other SATA power supply cable. Okay. So once again, my phone ran out of storage. So this third time's the charm here. This is our SATA power cable. I'm gonna take it here, plug it in there. Oh, flip it the other way maybe. What browser are you using? Right there. Take our other SATA data cable over here, and then plug it in. Maybe. Alright, now we plug it in here to our optical drive. Alright, so now all that's left is our 24-pin power supply, which that runs power from the power supply to the motherboard to give the motherboard power. So we're going to take that and plug that in here. And then our 4-pin CPU power supply, along with our case fan. Plug that in right here. All right, we got that plugged in. And then our power LED and USB. And there's two different USB, you can tell, because one says audio, and it'll say audio right there, FP audio. Take that, plug that in, along with the other one right beside it in any of the 3 USB slots. Okay, so we got our USB, and then our power LEDs need to go in here now. And you can tell which one goes to which because it'll say it here. So HDD, you can tell, but it says HD LED, and it would go into the yellow slot like so. Here. And typically the colored one is the positive and the white is the negative. And then right behind it is the power LED, which is the short one. So it says power LED here, so it goes right behind that one. And these are important because it gives power to the power switch on the front of the computer, along with the lights that show that it's turned on. And if you get these wrong, your PC will not turn on, so it's kind of rough at first. And then next is our power switch, and you can see our on-off, which it'll say switch or on-off. So that's the switch that powers it. So that goes in right beside it. We have that plugged in there. And then all that's left is our alternative power LED, which is our big one, and it has its own little thing right here. Plug that in, like so. Okay, so now all we have left is to put in our RAM and then plug it in and see if it turns on. Okay, now that we have our one RAM in the slot, we just take and push down on each end, and our little levers will click and lock it in place like so, so it's locked in. You can do that with the second stick if you have one. So these are DDR3 RAM, and they are 8 gigabytes each, so in total you have 16 gigabytes of RAM on your PC. So we're going to take the other one and put it right here. Okay, so now we got those in. All we have left is to plug it in with our power supply here and see if it turns on. But first, we're just gonna go over a couple like parts of it. SATA data cables, which run data from the motherboard to hardware in your computer, like your hard drive and your optical drive. And then we have another version, which is your SATA power cable, which of course runs from the power supply to components to power them as well. So you can tell it's a SATA usually by the L shape that they have. It's distinct L shape. And then 24 pin to 20, because there's a little thing right here that can go from, it's like a 4 and then a 20 combined, so it's a 24 pin. So you can do that in your PCIe and PCI slot, typically used for graphics cards. PCIe 16 is usually faster, more bandwidth. Then your USB, which gives power to your USB slots on the front of the computer, and then audio for those slots. Then power LEDs, which we already went over what those do. CPU fan, like I said, just provides more airflow along with the case fan. And then you have our power supply, which is an ATX that converts AC to DC to give to your computer to power it. And you never would open this, like I said earlier. And their optical drive, of course, which is used for reading, writing discs. And then 4-pin power thing here gives power from the power supply to your CPU to power that. And then I believe we have another couple to go over. Our Molex key connector, which they're not typically used anymore. And then let's see what else. Oh yeah, we have our ports here: USB, Ethernet, audio, VGA, PS2, USB. Then I think that one's parallel. And then yeah. So all we have left now is to plug it in and see if it turns on. Okay, we have our power plugged in here. Flip that switch, and we should see a green light right there that says standby, which is a good sign. And then we come over here for the moment of truth, and everything, the fans are going, so that is a good sign that it's powered on and working so far. And that's how to take apart a computer and put it back together. Yep, thank you. If anything's wrong, it's because it was just off the top of the old noggin here, and I did my best.